welcome to NQ80 Daily, and today with a new guest host, Dominic Booth, freelance journalist with The Guardian and the BBC. I'm Ed. How's it going, Dominic?
Very good, thank you, Ed. Very, very nice of you to have me on. It's a bucket list moment for me.
Well, no, joy to have you on as well. We're going to talk about Manuel Ugarte, or Ugarte, I think it is more correctly pronounced. I can never do it. My English brain,
struggle,
English brain keeps going to Ugarte, and I mix them up. It's like, a bit like David Gea, who I said for ages, and I was like, I know that's not correct. I know it, and had to train myself. All right, joined from Paris Saint-Germain, 50-something million pounds, and I guess a lot of people are a bit suspicious, really, because he only played sort of 20 games for Paris and didn't seem to fit in Luis Enrique's system, but Sunday's performance against Liverpool was a bit of a statement from him, coming of age or something like that. I thought he was really excellent. Perhaps man of the match, but just did everything you want in a defensive midfielder. So what have your first impressions been of him?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he had a major adjustment period, didn't he? I was at one of the first games he played at Old Trafford and remember being quite concerned, actually, thinking, is this the guy? Is this the guy that we've been looking for to save the midfield, to replace Casemiro? Casemiro dropped that absolute disaster class, didn't he, against Liverpool in the 3-0 home defeat? And we were all thinking, right, we need someone here. And it basically has to be this guy, Manuel Ugarte, who we've signed and invested a fair amount of money in. And I just thought I didn't know what he did. I didn't know what his strengths were. I didn't know, could he fill that void, but Casemiro was already leaving a void even when he was playing. But I think it's quite clear he suits Ruben Amorim's system better than probably anyone in United's squad. Struggling to think of someone who fits it better.
Yeah, I think that's right. He obviously knows the manager, so no adjustment period in terms of learning how to play for Amorim. Ten Hag, I'm not sure that he ever really trusted having like a pure defensive player in there. He seemed to like Casemiro sort of risk-taking, didn't he? And Ugarte took a while to sort of bed himself into the team. And those first few performances, especially with his passing, which seems sort of completely wayward and all over the place. And maybe he's asked to, maybe the instructions are slightly different under Amorim because he's not very progressive with the passing, right? He doesn't create a lot of yards going forward with it, but he's very accurate with it. And I think the ball around the corner was the one I loved almost more than anything. Pass
there's
or
an element of luck to that, wasn't there? But
little bit of luck, but it came off beautifully. But
it nearly created the winner, didn't it? So you have to applaud him for being in that position to start, because he was actually cutting out a Liverpool counter, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It could have easily been Liverpool having that chance in the last minute that eventually fell for Maguire, and we know what happened there. But I think that shows what Ugarte is about. He is everywhere, really. And in this day and age of supporting United, all you're asking for is 100% commitment and running and continuing to run and looking like you're giving absolutely everything. It's one of the major reasons why my favourite player for a long time for United was Fred, and people laughed at me and said, United could do a lot better than Fred. And of course they could and they can, and maybe this is a slight upgrade on Fred in Ugarte, but it's just that style of footballer where he's going to be there in the 90-odd minute, cutting out a pass and then getting maybe a bit lucky, but creating something down the other end for us. I think fans are already appreciating that.
Yeah, I mean, football is the game of running. For all the technical and the tactical qualities and the strategies and all of that we get and the data analysis, it's still a physical sport. And it is noticeable when players feel like they're not as physical as they could be or not as committed. And fans will always appreciate that, almost more than anything else. I mean, if you look at the criticism of Marcus Rashford, I think it stems from the fact he doesn't score goals anymore, of course, but also the perception that he's not running as much as he could or should. And that feeds into the criticism. And you'll never get that with Manuel Ugarte. I don't think we'll ever get a game from him where he's not. We might get bad games where he's not making those blocks, those interceptions, those tackles, his passing is astray. But I don't think we're ever going to get a game where he's less than completely committed, or at least gives the perception of that. we'll see what happens towards the end of the season when he's tired and whether that affects his game or not. But yeah, it just feels like of all the post-Fergie wellness years bad signings, and there's so many of them, the percentage of failure rate is so high. This one feels like it can't go wrong.
We've said that before, though.
Yeah, no, I know.
At this stage as well, this stage of players looking promising.
We have, and we've got he's only made 13 starts, right? So it's a small sample size. And so we do have to take that into account. But it feels like just that commitment and the ability to be everywhere and to make those tackles and interceptions, whether he's an absolute success in this team or this team is a success, feels like fans will love him for that commitment, and he's always going to give that. I guess my concern with him was always about the passing side of things, but I think if he's got the right player alongside him, that's going to work out all right. Because and I've said this on the podcast a few times, if Kobbie Mainoo can be a bit more brave with his passing, he's going to be the perfect foil for him. And
we do need that from Mainoo. I think it's a common gripe with him. And
yeah,
I'm not as I know I've heard a few of the recent podcasts, and you've been fairly critical of Mainoo. I think probably fairly. I think I'm always slightly more on the side of I'm not being critical to Mainoo because I see how his ceiling is so high.
Yeah,
he's a local boy. He's from Cheadle, which is where I live in Stockport in South Manchester. So I've got so much affinity and so much time for him. But I think that partnership is one of the most promising parts of the current team, the current project. What that partnership could become between Mainoo and Ugarte. They do seem to complement each other.
Yeah,
neither of them are true eights, are they? They're neither the true eights or true sixes, which is what I quite like about it. Like they both bring an element of both. They both got that combative, hard running in them. The one area that you pick on is the right one, which is neither of the most progressive passes, but both are prudent in possession, I would say.
I mean, 90% completion rate from Ugarte for United. I mean, I think he'll complete that throughout the season, something like that. There's a lot. I mean, he is a lot of sideways and backwards, but he uses it well, recycles the ball well, I think, and he's
I don't
quick.
mind that though.
Yeah,
I don't mind that.
If he's crisp with the passing, if he does it quickly, and he's a brilliant ball carrier as well. If you look at the data, he's up in the 80th percentile or something like that for ball carrying. So he moves the ball forward, even if he's not passing it forward, and I think that's going to be really useful for breaking those lines and disrupting any teams that are in the mid block as well.
Yeah, he sort of ferrets himself out of holes, doesn't he? He sort of squirms away from trouble, and much in the same way Mainoo and Bruno did as well against Liverpool. The amount of those tough situations where Liverpool were pressing quite hard, quite fiercely, United's midfield were just able to get away from trouble and keep the ball in a way that we just haven't done in recent years, really.
The press resistance and Manuel Ugarte as a midfield pair is excellent, better than we've had for such a long time. I mean, I guess the concern is they can't play every week, right? And the depth in central midfield with Casemiro fading and Eriksen almost faded is concerning, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure the club, if they can, will look to add. Well, probably we'll talk about Casemiro in a little bit, I think, but they'll probably look to ship some out and bring some in central midfield in the summer, depending on the finances. But yeah, that the pair's really feels really promising. I
think it's the influence as well of the likes of Jason Wilcox and Omar Berrado we're led to believe were quite key to this signing, and some people have viewed that as visionary from them, knowing that Ugarte's former manager Ruben Amorim would come in a few months' time. Obviously, we don't know how much of that is true. In an ideal sort of perfectionist United world where they actually plan things properly, we like to think so. Maybe the pieces have just fallen in place, but I think it did at least show United were looking at high caliber elite midfield options in the summer that didn't come at a bank breaking price. They didn't go after Frankie de Jong for 100 million again, because he was the most obvious and the only person that Erik ten Hag could seemingly think of to sign in the six. They went after a player who I think maybe other top clubs might have discarded or might not have thought of because of his time at PSG. But before that year at PSG, he was on everyone's radar, wasn't he? Right? Like Chelsea were looking at him. United would probably link with him because we're linked with absolutely everybody. I just thought it did show a little bit of joined up thinking, and I think maybe the data guys had a bit of an influence on that one, which is refreshing to say the least.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember Andy Mitten saying at the time that he had some contacts. I think he has a few good connections into the Enrique camp, saying that Paris Saint-Germain thought he would become one of United's best players, and it was really a stylistic fit rather than a performance problem. Now, who knows? Might be them blowing smoke up our asses, but it appears to not be the case, and that he'll turn out to be an excellent signing. And United need that, right? Need an 80% hit rate on signings, at least. I mean, there was
in the last summer we did have it. I think it's showing that we've mostly had it in the last summer, like it or not, with some of those signings and some of the prices paid. Other than Joshua Zirkzee, I haven't really got any gripes with any of them.
No, a bit of criticism of De Ligt after the Liverpool game, but I think that was really based on his disastrous 5 minutes, really. The rest of it was very good. So,
yeah.
That's
classic De Ligt in a way.
Yeah, the handball and getting skinned by Gakpo, neither of them looked good, did they? But I think that's his worst position, honestly, right centre-back. It's where he's most vulnerable, and in the centre, competing with Harry Maguire will be much better, and Lenny Yoro will probably fill that right-hand side given time.
That was a Ugarte error, though, wasn't it? That
it
sort
was
of let Gakpo in from the set piece as United were coming out. Ugarte probably being just too keen to cover every blade and to close people down, and then there's that little gap that was left, and Gakpo snuck in there. So
I think that was a fair criticism. Gary Neville pointed that one out. I guess he knows a little bit about defending, as painful as he can be to listen to on occasion. He knows
a little bit about criticising United as well, doesn't he?
He's excellent at that, to be fair. Yeah, he's really found a niche. Yeah. It's so okay. Let's talk a little bit about Casemiro, who I guess Manuel Ugarte has usurped in the team now, and Casemiro's got very few minutes under Amorim, and when he has played, it's not been very impressive. And I guess when he joined the club, my concern was that having it's no brag here, but having watched Real Madrid a lot because everyone does, he seemed to be a physically fading force. And he comes into the team. He was excellent for 6 months, and then really struggled at the back end of his first season. I thought, anyway. It just seems to be like that physical side of it. He seemed drained, and then the second season, not very impressive. But then who was really? And this season, we've had a few games where you're like, oh, he's back, and then he's not.
He still retains those abilities to read the play, doesn't he? And
he does, yeah.
Just sometimes you can see the class that was previously there. He looks like a Rolls Royce when he isn't made to turn around and sprint back towards his own goal. When he isn't made to cover acres of ground in front of him in midfield. There was always that sort of debate last year: is this Casemiro not being able to run anymore, or is this Ten Hag system exposing Casemiro? And it was both, right? It was absolutely both. And Casemiro was left in, I think it's a pretty invidious position. Quite unfair to ask of a player that great and who's achieved that much. Can you just be our one-man midfield, please, while we push up with 6 people and we have 3 people behind you? It was unfeasible.
It was totally unfair on him and exposed every single weakness. And his principal weakness is physical. I think he just can't cover the ground like he used to do. I prefer him if he's going to stay at the club for the next 6 months, and that's unclear whether he will. Continued reports are reporting the Times today that Saudi clubs are looking at him. I mean, I'd heard on the grapevine that was rubbish and that just wasn't true. This was United trying to ship him out, and it was really coming from the United side of things rather than the Saudi side of things. But we'll see whether that's true or not. But I prefer him in that 8 position if he's going to stay alongside Ugarte, if he's going to play as a rotation option, because his passing is nothing but progressive, right? It's almost wasteful.
Far too progressive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's way too risk-taking, but that's why you want him higher up the pitch if he's going to do that. So,
me and a few mates would go to games and last season or two and watch Casemiro and just pull our hair out of the number of blind passes. You talk about round the corner pass from Ugarte, but at least he looked up before playing it at Anfield. Casemiro, he'd be hoiking the ball round the corner like I would do in five-a-side, like me or you would do, or I don't know, you're probably much better at football than I am, to be fair.
I'm not.
But
No.
fair enough. But some of those passes, I just thought, how is a professional who's won 5 Champions Leagues ever making that pass? I don't care how tired you are, and I don't care how bad the system is. It was maddening to watch, and yeah, it would put United under pressure so much. I mean, you don't mind Bruno Fernandes doing those sort of passes because that's sort of what he's in the team for, right? It's when you're number 6, who really should just be ticking things over nice and quietly. If he's doing those kind of passes and then hasn't got the legs to chase the ball back when it goes past him, you're in big trouble. And that was part of the problem last season under Ten Hag.
Yeah, United. I mean, the consideration with Casemiro is both a sporting one and a financial one, isn't it? Because the £60 million fee split over 5 years, 12 and a bit million a year. PSR costs and his wages are about the same. So you're talking £25 million a season. I think United's wage budget this season is a touch over 180 million. They'll never break it out, but that's my guesstimation. Like if I'm tracking what it was to what it is. And so you're talking about a player whose PSR cost to United is 10% of the budget or something like that. And so it's an incredible sort of cost to United to have him there. If they offered, because he's got 18 months on his contract, if someone offered 10 million, you'd take the hit on the rest of the PSR just to get his wages off the book.
Given the wages.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, would you even do it this winter? Would you go with a one man less?
Well, I was thinking of the options that United have, because I think it's unlikely that we will sign a central midfielder, because there's a wing back. There's a need for a wing back, maybe 2. There's a need for a forward. There's a big need for a forward. And you're not going to get a central midfielder as well, really, and you start the standard January window. So, does Collier come into it? I think maybe at least he'll have the energy. I don't know about the quality. He's shown briefly, and in the under-21s that he's certainly got the energy. And then you're going down to people like Sekou Kone or Dan Gore if he can get himself injury-free.
Tough one with Dan Gore.
That's a risk, but yeah.
Kone's obviously, under 18s, he looks fantastic already, and he obviously has done that sort of youth age group international football. Feels a bit early for him in the Premier League.
Yeah,
it's always hard, right? Because Mainu, I remember Dan and I last season were talking about him, having watched him in the 21s, 23s, going, it just feels obvious with him. It's just too much quality there to not make it.
But even then, people doubted whether that could happen, didn't they? People said, well, he's never played. He played, and he started 1 or 2 games before that Everton breakout game last season. He barely played at all. Shone in pre-season, but Dan Gore's shone in pre-season, hasn't he? And all these players have. Midge Breeze to look good in pre-season. Andres Pereira, if we're going back, it's an easy place to do it.
It is very, the intensity's less. Under 21s, it's less strategic. Like, you don't have to understand every position, on the field all of the time, in their zones and the way they coach every aspect of the game. It's less physical. Like, the jump up is still too big. It's why the Premier League clubs are always looking at some kind of B competition or B teams or some way of bridging the gap or using the loan system. And so, it feels hard for any of those younger central midfielders. Collier was obviously brilliant at youth level at Brighton, and United did well to take him, but he's 21 now and he doesn't feel like it's happened, and he just might be a late developer. So, he
probably needs to move as well, doesn't he? He probably needs a loan move in his own career. So
he does.
You're not asking him to replace Casemiro if Casemiro goes in January, and you can't afford to lose both Casemiro and Eriksen, who are both, you probably in an ideal world, you'd ship both of them off, but that's not going to happen, I don't think.
No, I think it's the incoming side of a transaction that makes losing Casemiro in the winter hard, unless the fee is decent and United could do some actual business. So, but it feels like the only business they'd be able to do is a stopgap anyway in the winter. So that makes it a hard one. Whatever happens, I'm sure that Casemiro will depart by the summer, unless they can't find someone who will take his wages on, even on a freebie. Because at that point, you're writing off £12 million or something. It's nothing. Eriksen's out of contract.
Yeah.
So he'll definitely go. Casemiro's got 1 extra year.
That was a good idea, wasn't it? Giving him a 4-year contract at the age of 29, nearly 30. That was a cracking idea.
I mean, if you look at how Ineos have run Lausanne, and there's some interesting players actually. They've just Lausanne just paid a record fee for a young player. It's 5 times their normal rate, and I think a few of the youth scout watchers are going, okay, yeah, they're just warming him up for United and starting to use the multi-club network. But at Lausanne, and especially at Nice, they've basically only recruited young players.
Yeah,
and I think there's been a lot of sensible talk that they'll look to do mostly that at United. And to be fair, they were all young in the summer, right? I mean, I think was De Ligt the oldest of the 4 that came in. So,
yeah, how old is De Ligt? Feels like he's really old, but he's actually not as old as you think. He's been around for ages.
Maybe Masraoui. Yeah, he's 25. Masraoui's maybe a year older than that. So, yeah, he's at the top end of what they might look to do. So, I think when they're refreshing midfield, that will be what they probably look to do. They'll probably look to bring in 2 under-25 central midfielders in the summer.
And in the summer, it's that profile of target that United go after, isn't it? Do they need a Casemiro replacement, or do they want someone more progressive, someone who can do that passing that we lack in those sort of number 6 or 8 roles? I don't think they're number 6 roles at all. It keeps being said by everybody, but just the way that system operates, they have to push up. They have to do a lot of running. I don't think you can count them as 6s. The problem is you can't. But the availability of people who are very good progressive passers and who play that position is so scant if you look at the market. I mean, the Premier League at the moment, who's doing that job? I wrote down a few. Tielemans, maybe, but obviously you're not going to get him out of Aston Villa at the moment. And then it's the likes of Enzo, Ish, McAllister, and obviously Rodri, and you're not going to get any of them either. So you're going to have to look abroad and be creative and find someone less of the top tier.
To throw a name out there, Frankie de Jong is out of contract at Barcelona in the summer, and they would absolutely love to get rid of him. So
I wonder what Eric Ten Hag would think if United signed Frankie de Jong now.
It would be a bookend of trolling Eric Ten Hag, wouldn't it? Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. That's today's daily on Manuel Ugarte's very good start to United after a little bit of a shaky time for the first few games. Statement performance against Liverpool. I think we'll get a lot more of that. Dominic, lovely to have you on.
It's been a pleasure, Ed. Thank you very much. Let's do it again.
Welcome back anytime. Yeah, we will. And listeners, thanks for watching or listening wherever you are.